this way here. If you have a trouble going to line.
We got more?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry for the brief interruption. We have some technical difficulties. We apologize for that. Carlton, I think I was asking you at what point in your young life did you decide that you wanted to start collecting art?
I didn't decide that in my young life. It was really during the Philadelphia period. I was mostly, as I remember it, into sport, basketball, and academics. Although studying the liberal arts you were exposed to art. It was a narrow spectrum of it, the Western Academy, when I got that, and Rembrandt.
But that formed the basis for it?
I was attracted to it. Some people were repulsed by it, but I enjoyed it. It was beautiful. So
and Will, what about you? When did you get the inclination to start collecting art?
I was very young when I was attracted to Philadelphia Museum of Art, the Rodin, the Barnes, school trips when we were kids. And I started buying posters at the gift shops. And then I would, have those framed for way more than what the posters are.
we all did that.
But they looked good. They looked great, and that's
That's the point that you all should take it. Remember, because the overprice on the
framing. Yeah, framing is not cheap, but it definitely enhances the work if you do it right. So I started, buying these poster prints and having them framed. It was really decorative. And at some point, probably in my early to mid-20s, turned my focus to African American artists. Still buying prints and posters, but I was actually had a shopping wish list. So even when I was doing it wrong, I thought I was collecting. Because I wanted Carlton Lewis, I wanted the names that I knew, and so I was doing that, and then I met Barbara Wallace. Everybody knows Barbara Wallace. And she said, stop doing it. Stop buying these posters and having them framed and thinking that nothing's wrong with posters, but it's the thing you're supposed to move more. So she identified to me that it was time for me to step it up and move forward. So at that point I started the first original art piece I bought was from Lucian Crumb. Yeah, so that was, and I said 22 years, that's like 28. My daughter, who's now 30, she was on my hip, so she was 1 or 2 years old. And so that's the first original piece that I bought, and then started. So for me, it's been kind of a progression. But even before I was doing it right, I was buying art intentionally. Like I said, wrong, but intentionally.
So, what do you look for what grabs you decide to buy things? What are you looking at? Are you looking at the name of the artist? Are you looking at the work? Are you looking at the artist and how the artist has been shown in other places to show this name recognition? Do you consider looking at those issues before you make a decision to buy art? And do you sometimes apply based on your gut?
So the first thing is the aesthetic. I gotta like the piece. I'm drawn to abstract and expressions art, less so to figurative. Not at all figurative, but less. So you start there, and then it's And then I like to, look at what is this artist doing as far as, managing their practice, managing their career. That's a big thing for me. And then that has a huge impact on my buying decision.
Is there a reason for that? And we can, if this after I mentioned earlier, we can talk about it later, but what's the reason that you take that position when you buy these art?
Well, for me, it's legacy, future cultural relevance of the artwork and the artist, which you can't predict with any accuracy, but I can definitely make an effort to predict. So that's those are the things I'm looking at. In 50 years, in 100 years, is this artist, will this artist have been relevant? And for me, just trying to figure that out is a big part of my life.
How do you project that?
So you don't know, but what I can assess is from the artist CV, where they're showing, what trajectory they're trying to be on. There are artists who pursue gallery shows, who pursue museum exhibits, who work with dealers and are conscientious about which collections they get into. There's a level of career management. Now, whether or not they'll be successful in that, I don't know. But the fact that they're making that effort impacts my mind. But there's some people who very, very talented artists sitting outside ripping out square, just doing that and selling work and making a living, and that's it, and that's okay. It's not. But again, that impacts my mind. So I may not buy that artist sitting outside the park. I'm going to buy that artist, in here, trying to get into the museum gallery, trying to, how can I get into this museum collection? How can I get into?
Because that affects the value of the work. Is that why?
Because it affects the cultural relevance of the work. I don't sell art. So yeah, I like knowing that the art, the pieces I buy go on without.
Oh yeah, it's an investment.
But I'm never sold anything. I have I'm sure I might, before I die, probably sell some art. But I have no intention of selling art. So
you get to go with a bunch of collectors, and you say to collectors, let's do some trading or buy. That's how you sell art, and you think really.
Like a swap.
Yeah, you call it a
I like that. I like that idea. I like that idea.
So Linda, what's your buying preference? Do you have one?
My buying preference.
For art, yes.
Whose art or what kind of art?
If you like you in the Louis Jones gallery, there's a variety of art in this gallery.
Mm-hmm.
And if you went into a space like this, if this space represented ecologically, you consider that's a plug for the gallery.
Well, it certainly has filled that bill several times in the past. It's interesting listening to him because I am totally, I guess, some people would say ignorant or unschooled in this collection thing. I have collected, and of course, with my late husband, Azel, whose taste in art was, we overlapped some, but he liked a lot more abstract stuff. I remember we had these, I don't know who they were by, I hated them, 2 big pieces, and they were mostly black, and they had a couple of lines and squares. I mean, they were not awful, but
Who's got it?
I don't know. I took them down after he died, and I changed everything because I didn't. But he was doing a little more collecting than I am acquiring things that I like to look at. that appeal to visually appeal to me, and I liked them in my life. I think he was more intentional in terms of the investment.
Do you consider yourself, people, like there's a variety of art here. Do you consider yourself a collector that wants variety as part of your collection?
Some degree. I think that the key thing for me is the visual interest and color. And I do have some things that are abstract, but I would say that what I enjoy about the art that I own is, like I can sit just look, and I see something different. And I had another thought that goes back to when I was very young. When I lived the first few years of my life in Cleveland, Ohio, and you were asking about, well, where did you get this attraction to art? And my parents had some things, very few, but specifically I'm thinking about two paintings they had, I think by a German artist. I still have them because they were up in their house until they died a dozen years ago. And it was like a town. It's like you see this little village, and I would sit there as like a 4-year-old, and I would look at it and say, what people live in those houses, and where does that road go? I mean, I had a whole thing going with these paintings on the wall. So I think that was a bit of the start of my interest in having things.
But you also like to read and like to read a lot of books. So you think books. Do you think some people associate art collecting? You were in college, but you studied literature. Because why would you go from getting into the art world unless you understood literature? There's books. The books have anything to do with your direction. The books will push you towards the art scene.
Well, I have a lot of exposure to art in terms of my education from when I was a kid and in art classes. There was a woman, Mrs. Dabney, who was an art teacher, and I made all kinds of things. I made mosaics. I liked creating things myself. And then in undergrad, yes, I majored in English and creative writing. Across from the English department at Stanford was the design school, which has become a very big thing at Stanford in terms of something they call design thinking, which is a little bit beyond where I was. But I took basic design from a fabulous professor, and he also was my professor when I spent 6 months living in Florence, Italy, which meant I was immersed in Renaissance art. So, yeah, I have a lot of different ways I come at it in terms of history, in terms of learning about the great masters and those sorts of things.
So you think it's important, history is always important for young collectors. Mm-hmm. They need to, I've met a lot of collectors, a lot of artists. And I would forget collectors and say, who don't know about the masters, not to know about the true art history. And I would assume that all three of you, when you go about collecting, you got those thoughts in your head. You think about then, now, and this piece, and what this piece can do, if you like it, if you want to consider it as an investment. So some collectors do collect to invest. There's no doubt they do that. So Carlton, do you have, I know that you like, I know we were in a gallery one day, and you were looking at these images. You like what's the word? Mineralistic. What's that word? Mineralistic, monotone. What was the phrase that we used when we were looking at those pieces?
Monochromatic.
And you said that you like that style. Now,
actually, I have a friend of mine, he's done this since the 1960s named Quentin Moorelw, trained on Papa, and all of his works are black, modern and he stuck with that all these years, decades. And now in his senior years, he really blew up.
So what's your style? What do you look for?
Well,
Do you have a varied collection?
yes. As you were talking, I was thinking about that. And my approach is more artist-driven. I like to get to know the artist and engage with them. I really like artists. And that grows into...
Why is that? Is that part of your buying process?
Yes. I think it's kind of an envious part of it because I don't have any talent and they're so talented. But I like creative people. My work life is kind of different from that. Professional work, administration, creative people will find that to be kind of flat, but that's what I did to earn a living, but my personal life is more artistic.
And do you make it your business when you're out and about to stay engaged into what's going on in the art world? And why is that important?
I do.
Do you think that's important for collectors to always know what's going on?
Yes. My colleagues here, if you're serious about building a collection, you have to know the contours of the field, what's investment grade, what's not, what are the different kinds of genres that are available, and that sort of thing. I think that's very important. And I don't, for many years now, I just wouldn't buy anything impulsively, let's say, right off the street corner. Although I did do that some years back when I was in the business. I was about
We all got some good buyers when we were traveling.
Yeah,
this is good art out there. You can get a whole lot for next to nothing.
yeah.
There's good art out there, so I'm sure we all did that.
Well, yeah, that's some street art. Asian street art.
Another thing that happened to me up here, I started dating a woman who was not only a heavy-duty artist, but she was a curator, administrator, and so that brought me deeper into it. She left Philadelphia and was working for the studio with them for a while, and then she moved to Tampa, Florida, where she was curating this collection. And she ended up going back to her own home state in Hartford, Connecticut, where she was head of the Amsa Foundation and curator for African American artists for Washington.
See, what's coming from this discussion is how expansive your depth of knowledge that you all sharing about how you got involved in this process. You're talking history, you're talking roots where the things that are remaining part of you. Talking about the financial side and the wealth side associated with collective art. You can see this so snobbish. Some people say collectors can be a bit snobbish. I'm the kind of person that I'm direct, and I think I have to be. But sometimes there's some bad art out there. And I'm not saying that knocking artists, but I'm saying that to say this. A emerging artists, people say sometimes a bad art, that's bad art, that's a market that you don't know where it's going to go. You know, and we want to encourage the young artists. So do you have, or would you, if you have it, would you, focus on buying some art from the emerging art? And you have some in your collection.
Yeah, my collection is a lot of emerging artists. And to your point, I'd say 80% of the art in my collection is artists that I could call on the phone right now.
So you have a relationship with them, which is good.
Yeah.
And that's a good way of building a collection too.
Oh.
I mean, I would say I'm part of that. Mama would tell you that. I've been training a whole bunch of art.
Oh, I love the artists.
They used to art at my house and not come back. Am I right? I just don't get this stuff. Anyway.
Yeah, for me, that's a huge part of the appeal. You know, is knowing the artist, and I'll get a piece, and when it shows up, I'll invite them over, and we'll have a little installation party. And that's the best for me. I remember my mentor, Ryan Oppie, he's passed now, but he was telling me he's responsible for this, because he was telling me all these great stories about Ed Clark and all these other artists that he hung out with. We'd go in the studio, and I'd take a bag of groceries and a couple of bottles of wine and hang out, and I would, and he's got these are the artists in his collection, and he was a heavyweight, a real heavyweight. So when he started mentoring me, he said, "Did you get an Ed Clark yet? Did you get a Sam Young yet?" I'm like, "I don't know those people. You know those people. I want to be like you by buying art from people that I can hang out with." So that was a big shift for me. And like I said, probably 80% of the artists in my collection are people I can actually get on the phone, and people that I see on a regular basis. It's got to be half of the pictures hanging on the wall of people that I see on a regular basis. So yes, I like the emerging artists, and I can get my hands on Norman Lewis. I'm absolutely going to do that.
But one of my favorites.
So
yeah,
are we talking the Norman Lewis original or Norman Lewis series?
Oh, I would love to have a Norman Lewis original.
Oh,
yeah, that's
yeah.
I'm not leaving this earth till I get one. So
there you go.
But
there's a brother up in New York. I think he
has
does this Bill Hodges.
Yeah, Bill Hodges has a bunch of them.
He goes out to Southampton and has shows out there. So he's a high end.
Yeah, absolutely. But he's not discounting those. So
y'all are out of my league now.
So we all want the big things, but for me, it's really cool to hang out with artists and have those emerging artists in my collection. And I get as excited as they do, when they get a residency, when they're on tour. So, somebody just called us, I got a solo show opening at a museum in upstate New York, and it's, they call me because they know I'm gonna be excited for them.
That's great. That's great. So one of the things I like about this whole art thing is being supportive, and one thing collectives do is encourage. Mm-hmm. And let me ask you, have you ever saw a piece, talked to the artist, and kind of said to the artist, have you ever considered doing this with that? Or, making it bigger? Some pieces you say to yourself, okay, I wonder what that piece would look like if it was bigger. And when you buy art, do you take those factors into consideration? That's being rather analytical, but, art buying can be scientific. You look at the angles of the pieces, you look at the dimensions. So, interesting space.
Yeah, you're talking about, you guys are way ahead of me because you are clearly analyzing artists according to the value proposition that's associated with the kind of work they've done over time, and you track that. Mostly I don't do that, except for Mo Brooker, but anyway. Yeah, I know.
I see where. There's somewhere.
You got that early, that's a win.
I did. Other people I never did. I remember joking with him years ago. There was wasn't there like an annual art show up in New York with black artists?
I used to go to the
The $5 shit at the park.
So I went up there. I think it was in New York or something else. And I always kept a little card. You always get a really pretty card with the art. And that was the invitation. And I remember joking with him about how I think, no, I'm going to take this home and pray. That's what I do all the time. And I did, unfortunately, for whatever reason, my brain, every time I see one of his pieces, I want, and all this time, and I didn't do it. So maybe I had to sell my entire collection.
No, you can, well, you look at it,
I got one of his pieces, translation. It cost me $1,000.
Yeah,
no small
Yeah,
by
12, right? 12 by 11.
Well, we got a good deal of one, right, Robin? I got a great deal. I told you what deal I got. But this is back then, before he got his truck, so to speak, in terms of value. I went to a show and a gallery on, what's the head of the place again? The guy had the gallery name.
He used to be on Main Street with the
African art.
the exposed brick wall.
Yes,
Yeah.
Baseball.
Yes.
In any event, I went to a show. Sandy Webster, her husband, God rest her soul, her husband, and it was a Mo Brooker show. So I looked at the pieces. This is prior to the pandemic. And I said to myself, you know what, that was a smart play. And when I saw what they were selling for then, and the folks that were there, it doesn't look like us. It was like me and Sam's husband, that was in the home. That was it. But they was trying to find his work. He'll get his, now it's interesting, he's deceased. He was getting his recognition. Now it's
Gone.
He's popped up the way he's supposed to.
Yeah, well, the primary thing is the scarcity. There cannot be any more coming to the market. So that alone pushes the price.
Yeah.
I know every time somebody tells me the Beast of Butler story, it makes my stomach hurt. Cause
Now tell the audience who Beast of Butler is.
So Beast of Butler does that fiber work, and she is the biggest and best thing in fiber work since Faith Rainbow. Okay, and I think, I'm going to be challenged on this, but I don't care. I think the term fiber work refers to Beast of Butler specifically because it was too intricate and exquisite to be called quilting. Okay, like she just...
It is quilting, isn't it?
It is quilting, but she just totally redefines it. She's so good. And I remember sitting in somebody's living room and they had a Beast of Butler, and they're like, yeah, you should get one of these. This girl is about to go off. And they had got it like $800. I know half a dozen people who got Beast of Butlers for under $5,000. Way back in the way back. And she just did the show at the Peach Gallery. Yeah, now she's in the six figures. And
she has a national name.
yeah, a friend of mine had got one for $4,000 in an auction for $60. Took it to auction for $60. She didn't want to sell it, but couldn't not sell it because of the price increase. So sometimes those things are gonna happen. Mo Brooker, Who saw that coming? Somebody saw it coming. You saw it coming. You got a good deal. Now he's out of pocket. You know, I think Martrice Roach is going to be one of those.
Patrice?
Yeah, it's going to be one of those.
She's somebody to watch.
She's definitely somebody.
She's working with classes, so she's putting herself the right. And I like how she's moving. And you know what?
The way she navigates the space, yeah.
And the one thing I found, you know, one of the things I do here is I talk to the artists. I like giving them my idea of what they should be considered. And they do listen.
Oh, yeah.
They listen. And she's, you know, you got to get eyes. Let me ask you this question. Some people say that you got an eye for this stuff. You got a good eye. You know how to find this. That multiple people will like.
I think that's true. You do have a good eye. Not bragging on you.
You can hide him a little bit. He's good at his job.
I mean, tell people why it's so important to have autographs. I mean, collectors collect for a reason. They enjoy having things around them that make them impact them. They walk down the hall, you come in the house, after whatever happened outside in the street, and you can sit there and sit at peace.
Absolutely. When you mentioned Fanny Webster, I remember when we first moved out here, 30-some years ago. So we got moved in, and you know, got to go back to work, and sort of not quite moved in. And so it was kind of a lot of white walls, and nothing was on, but I didn't have time. So I come home one day. Basil met me at the door with a glass of wine, which is something I don't think ever did any other. I said, "What did you do?" You know, and I walk upstairs, and all of our art was up, all in the living and dining room, and it changed. What it did is it made the house into our home. It bare walls. Not fun. And it was like, now I live here, you know? And it was, goodness knows back then, the art that that they were putting up was not the world's best. Because we were just starting acquiring things. But they all the difference in the feeling in the house.
I like to wonder if you types of art that you like to buy. I mean, we're not limited to paintings, we're not limited to sculptures. So, is it fair to say that you have a variety of different mediums? Sculpture?
One time I bought a ceramic from the famous African American artist, and that was all I could afford at the time. The Jews told me I could come and visit her, but you got to buy something. So I still have that. I bought it around. Camille Phillips, quite sister.
Why have I heard that name?
Well, she's a New York-based artist, filmmaker, visual artist. She and her husband founded a art periodical, Hatch Phillips collection. Quite a woman. Originally from Los Angeles.
So, what advice would you give to people about doing all the things that you've done with your collection? How you go about getting your collection, the knowledge associated with how you go about buying artwork, and the service that you use. I mean, if somebody is 20 to 25 years old, and they're sitting there saying, you know what, it's something I want to consider doing. What would you tell them to do, starting out?
Well, I would ask them how much they know about art, to try to have a basis to know what it is you're buying and what it is you like, and may be attracted to a particular piece of art, but not know that much about it. And my bias would be that you should learn about art and take it seriously. For example, common usage is what I call a print. And not really know what a print is, how a print is made, and there are all different kinds of prints. So I think
there's serigraph. You consider serigraph a print?
No, actually, I wouldn't. I would call that a silk screen. But that's a little different.
But it's all. Would you say it's all printmaking in that printmaking field? Now, I'm saying that so you can tell people the difference between a printmaking print, a pull print. Those are different.
Yeah.
And all those have different values.
That's a whole different conversation.
Correct.
That's a conversation by itself.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, because I have a print that's 1 of 12.
Well, we got.
And then you got open-ended prints, and you got posters. Which technically are prints.
No, they are.
And isn't it true that
they're photographic reproductions?
Those have value.
Oh, yeah, you get something from Raven, Curly Holton, or Brandywine, those have value, especially if it's, well, not especially, all of those are limited. I don't think Curly has anything more than like 50. Brandywine, I think, was like 125. So for the most part, they're limited runs, they're not open-ended. So, there are prints at MoMA. There are prints in major museums. So they do have value, but I think if you're starting out, so that's something that you want to learn. I think starting out, if I was going to advise a collector, I would be, contrary to what you tell them, I would tell them, get started, buy some stuff, make some mistakes. Try to keep your mistakes inexpensive. But because you can analyze yourself in paralysis, or you can just buy the things that you like and then build on that. So what Barbara was helping me, right? This mess you made, there's some patterns to it. And this is what I see you're trying to do. So if I hadn't started, she wouldn't have had a starting point to point me in the right direction. She's an absolute genius. I love her to death. She's been really hugely, and she introduced me to my mentor, Ron Otley. So she's hugely impactful in my collection. And another thing that I would say to a young collector is support emerging artists.
I believe in that.
There's an artist, very good friend of mine, and she was saying, the stuff that people bought from her for $3,000, $5,000 is more impactful than, now the stuff goes for $50,000. Half of that goes to the gallery, still $25 is a nice paper. But now she's not hungry. That $3,000 paid rent. It bought some paint, or whatever a medium is. So support those artists, because that's how they get to exist. And I think those people who brag about having gotten over or having got a piece of better, they're not really bragging about the money, because they're not selling it anyway. But then really, the point of pride is that I was a part of that. I supported that. I was a part of her emergence. I was there when that artist was young, and now they're blowing up. It's $100,000. I was there when she was at my house asking me $8,000.
See, I claim some myself for those who were making, had their presence here in the gallery. I'm like, yeah, happy for you. just the artist that decided that she's become known as a realist around the city. She started. It's interesting how you can be supportive of.
Yeah, I remember her show.
Yeah, she's amazing. She's blowing up on murals around the city. So, Linda, I mean, in your stoic way, what would you say to a young person?
You know, I think listening to people who've been a lot more intentional and serious about this than I have been, I do believe that you start with looking around and making your own judgments on a limited scale economically of what you like. Don't fall into it costs a lot, it must be good. That's a way of trying to fall into. No, go, you know, look at folks who, some shows that are at an art school. That might be a place to start. And another thing, one of the things I remember doing long ago, back when the school district was in the beautiful building on the Parkway.
Well, that's a wonderful art building too.
Yes, and they used to do the student artists in a show every spring.
Fantastic.
And I went to that, and I still have a couple things I got there. But it just looking and kind of seeing, like, wow, somebody 16, 17 did that. And then in other places seeing, yeah, somebody 8 or 9 did that one, you know. It really was quite an experience to kind of see what might be developing. So I'm pretty sure the school district doesn't do that anymore because they barely have art teachers.
They used to have
Art on the cart, you know, where they go from room to room. But find, you know, there's places where kids study art. There's places where people, they still get MFAs. Go check out the shows because that's a good way to immerse yourself.
So, there's some folks in here, and I want to know, we got a few minutes left before we end this wonderful discussion. If anybody have any questions they want to go out to these, I would call them these seasoned, I use the word seasoned collectors. These not started like 2-3 years ago. These are what we call old days collectors. Does anybody have any thoughts, comments?
So the way I understand art collectors is that you guys either one buy because you like what it looks like, so it can be great color or something like that. 2, you have a store, some historical value. 3 is because you buy it because you want to sell it at a higher price. So it seems to me like there's, I thought it was 2 different kinds of collectors. It seems like there's 3 different kinds of art collectors there.
Well, if you're buying something with the intention of selling it, you are not a collector. You are, you're a dealer or an
Okay,
investor.
just a dealer.
Yeah. So that's a whole other person. But
But collectors can sell from their collection.
yeah, because I mean, at some point your taste is going to change, or you will find that you bought heavily in a particular area. You know, like I have.
Certain artists.
Yeah, like I got one artist who, and I'm not selling anything, but there's an artist I got like 7. You know, there's another one I got 6. You know, and that's.
You support it.
Yeah, but then I'll see another one, but I like that, and I have to pull back, you know? So, if I was to end up selling something, it would be something that I had overbought. You know, probably 70% of my collection is African American women artists. You know, so the last 2 pieces I got were O'Neal Scott and Paul Goodman. So, you know Paul's name?
Yes, I do.
He's a good man. So, you know, trying to balance it out. So, you will sell things, but it's primarily going to be because you overbought in a certain space.
Yeah, overbought.
And you got to either make some room physically, spatially make room, or make room in terms of balancing the collection. But collectors don't buy with the intention of selling. And like your starting point is going to be different. Some people will start with the artist. Some people will start with the aesthetic. And but you know, you kind of wherever you start, you gotta, because it passed its first test, like that one right there. I like the way that looks. Passed the first test.
You talking about
The Easter David, yeah. So,
the big Easter?
yeah. So I like it.
You really like that?
I really like it, yeah. So I'm looking at that and say, okay, I like the way it looks. That's the first test. Second test, who's the artist? Is he going to be doing stuff? Yeah, we know he's going to be doing stuff. And then the third test is, you know, price. At some point, it's not my test, but the wife is going to say, where the hell are we putting that? So, but you got to pass the test. And for some people start with, you know, who's the artist before they even look at it. You know, who's the artist? And it depends on what, you know, where you want to collect from, but you're going to have to pass a couple of tests before you actually get into an artist collection.
That's true. I mean, because yeah, that's true. And it's, you know what, some artists would like to be in people's collection. You know, it's interesting how if you're in somebody's collection, you know, like I'm in his collection, I'm in her collection. There's maybe some statue. And Sandy used to always do these publications. She promoted how many folks in this area had her work. And there was a lot of folks who looked just like us, and some of whom you all know. But you think if you will always be buying pieces, do you think you're going to still buy work even though, do you need any more work? Answer the question. I think we have the art therapy associated with the student, you get overbuy.
You absolutely
can. You have to downsize, and you have to say, what am I going to do with all this? You know, it's a legacy you want to pass. You know, you want to pass it on.
It's an addiction.
Well, that's pretty hard.
Somebody said it's an addiction.
No, it's not an addiction.
I'm sure it is.
I'm sure it could be. But probably not. But I think that you know, you're really thinking legacy. And this is where I am right now. So you start to figure out how am I moving this stuff around the world. Because one, there's not space to have it all in my home. But two, I don't want it all in my home because I can't have all you people in my house on a regular basis. But I want you all to enjoy my collection.
So let me ask, so you bring something up that I appreciate. I see a lot of collectors who have amassed a nice collection are now letting their work be shown. And you have we have enough work to do something like that. Am I right? We can have the Ruby Jones private collection at the bar. We could fill that place up. But we can show at least one big cover. But the point I'm trying to make is, are you thinking that's something that you might consider doing?
Oh, absolutely. I'm already working on it. I got a piece here from Ross, the dress that was hanging up. I bought that knowing full well it was going to come into my house. You know, I already knew where it was going before I bought it. You know, there's an institution that wanted it. So I got it, and that's where it's going. You know, and I'm building relationships with curators and, you know, people so that this stuff can go places. You know, I've had a couple of pieces, not a lot, but a couple of pieces that have, you know, traveled. You know, and
you think that's important for the artists because I think if the artwork is, some people become regional, and you need to widen that base so that art can be seen.
Oh yeah, yeah, and it's for me, and I think probably for other collectors too. It's a point of pride for my work to be somewhere else. You know, if I got a piece of art that I own, that I bought from an artist who I hung out with, and it was in my house, and now it's in Crystal Bridges in Arkansas. When it leaves there, it's going to the Getty, and it's going. So in 6 months, it'll be back in my house.
So what's the benefit as a collector? Why do you see that concept? Value or something like that?
Well,
is it about the legacy of the artist?
It's the legacy of the artist. It's at some point the legacy of the collector. You know, because that's the thing now is there are legacy collections. You know, like the Petrucci Family Foundation just did a book signing at the Woodmere. You know, so that's a famous collection. Pamela Joyner, Jafreda. She's a famous collector, so her collection is as famous as any of the artists in the collection. So that's artist legacy, the collector's legacy, and it allows for more people to see and enjoy the art. You know, you publish a book, anybody with $50 or $30 can buy a book. You send it out in exhibitions, and anybody with $8 can get a book. How much it costs you? Whatever. So you go to the museum and you can see it. Because I want to share my collection, you probably want to share yours, but we can't have that like train for our living room. So being able to send work out like that, so it's a good idea. And like I said, for me, it's a point of pride. I love knowing that my stuff gets to go places.
That's a nice tribute to how you see your collection and how the importance of it. It gives name recognition because at some point you might see where Jiggetts collection at the Woodmere. So that's the goal, and that's your ambition?
Yes.
That's a smart play.
Yeah. I
think that's important. I was at a luncheon yesterday. It's a Moorelw Museum out there in Collegeville, a wonderful place. And, wanting to finally get into promote some art, which is good. So, I think we're going to wrap this up. It was a nice, wonderful talk here at the Ruby Jones Gallery, and we're in a space today where we have art from the wall. And we want to thank you for coming and sharing your backgrounds. That's great. Good.